want me to end it?
No, I need to
Oh,
get the stream key and shit.
okay. No
The
problem.
normal stuff.
I'm still connecting anyway.
Okay.
Oh, are you ready?
No, I still need to switch my thing to.
You're going to do the stream key?
Yeah, so I have to do that.
Sure. All right. I'm streaming in all places. Cool. I'm waiting for Ariel to get on. Hello, Doctora. Hello. Folks are rolling in. We're going to take a minute here to get started. You know how it is. Technical issues. All right. Awesome. Hi. Okay. Welcome. This is another episode of Not Your Mommy's Advice podcast with myself, Claudia Parada, and
Ariel, I am back as well. Welcome back.
yeah, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in. I see we got some folks on the live stream with us, so that's really exciting. So this is our 21st episode. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right. Do you want to do a short check-in, or should we just go ahead and dive in and spin the wheel?
We can do the small check-in.
All right. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I'm a little tired. Long day,
Yeah.
but yeah, overall pretty good. Pretty good. How are you?
I feel like that's been a general theme. Like today has felt like a marathon, and it was
Yeah,
just back to back, and like so helpful that you helped me mix that salad before we went to our community meeting.
had a lot of
S-
feelings about it.
I'm sure you did, and it
Yeah.
was really sweet that you were doing because I was like, I have to get these kids in the bath, and I really need somebody to mix this salad that I signed up to bring.
That
So
was
thank
not
you.
made.
No, but I had all the ingredients, so
Yeah, it's just
contributions to our
it's not
community.
15 minutes as they said.
The
They said
recipe. I
15
didn't say it was
plus.
gonna be 15 minutes. It was the recipe online that said it was gonna be 15 minutes.
Yeah,
So
those are lies.
yeah,
So
lies. All right, cool. But we're here now. We're excited. We're ready to go. All
eso
right. I'm
todo
gonna go ahead.
chele puta, man.
Okay. I'm
Yeah,
gonna go
ese no
ahead and
chele, yeah. Uh-huh.
I'm gonna go ahead and let you share your screen and we can
Yeah,
get this wheel spinning. See what we're gonna talk about today.
cool. All right. Spinning. Okay, just listening.
All right, let's see what we got.
Already did it.
Very good. I think you might need to spin again.
Yeah, we're spinning that again. That's
Okay.
a typo.
Okay.
Uh,
Ooh. The role of therapy in strengthening relationships. Okay.
yeah.
Well, for those of you who don't know, I am a psychotherapist. So I am really excited about the role of therapy in all couplehood. I mean, just in general, but also because that was so monumental and foundational to like before we got married, after we got married. It was just I'm not even I couldn't even imagine being in a marriage and not having gone to therapy. So
Yeah, I don't
I
think we would
I
be
I
here.
drank the Kool-Aid,
I
so
don't, yeah, I don't think we would be here without therapy. I mean, I think
there's just no way.
yeah, I mean, prior to you, I had gone to a couple of therapists. Like, when you go to the university, like when I was in college and I was at City College, you would get like 6 free therapy sessions,
That's
like for
right.
students. And those, like, I remember just meeting that person, and I was like, oh, you don't know what the fuck you're doing. Like, just feeling like really apprehensive towards therapy, like not knowing what to say in a therapy session, not knowing, like, not being super aware about my experiences, which I was really young. I was like, well, maybe like 21, 20 when I first met them. Uh and it wasn't like continuous,
The
it wasn't
therapist, you
that
mean?
therapist,
Yeah.
yeah. And they also just didn't have like like, it's not that they can't have my experience, but it was like these there was like a young white lady and an older white lady. So
That's not the
like,
first time I've heard that as, like, a person going to the university college counseling center, and it's a Latino person, and they're seeing a white person, which is not bad. I'm just saying, like,
well,
it
in my experience it was because I'm
yeah.
like, I'm a Latino
I mean,
man
inherently,
boy
it's
at
not
this
inherently
point.
bad.
Huh?
Mhm. I'm saying it's not inherently bad, but
Yeah,
you're
it's not
saying it was
inherently
not great.
bad, but I think like going through that experience, like going through, at least at that time when I was going to city college, like just seeing what like my friends were going through, what I was going through, like with my relationship at that time, like I just felt like I wasn't totally being like seen in regards. Like, it's not that maybe not seen, but I didn't know how to talk into that experience. So maybe it's a little bit of me and my naivety of like therapy at that point,
Mhm.
and like who I was in front of, and like at that point having a really like apprehensive and almost like hostile relationship with white people up until that point.
I mean, I think that that's hella real, though. I mean, it this is probably just so an important point to just make overall because I think that a lot of people's experiences I mean, especially, like, thinking about the intersections of your identity, but just stepping into the therapy room in general, it's like, "Can I trust you? Can you actually handle what I'm, like, trying to bring to you?" Like, that's so real and honest, and it's like, it really does like, it's a huge consideration for the person who is participating in therapy, but also for the therapist. So if the therapist doesn't know, like, that their identity is obviously gonna impact the relationship or influence in one way or another, or is even aware of that, then of course, that makes so much sense to me that you would be like, "I'm 21, I'm a young Latino man, I've seen some shit, and I don't know if you're gonna be able to, like, actually see me or talk to me about anything real," you know?
Yeah.
So but then I also feel like that is a greater what is the word I'm trying to use? It's just there's a bigger thing happening because as 2 young people who entered into a relationship, we're kind of, like, left to our own devices to navigate this marriage, right? So if we're like we didn't get married in the church, so it's not like we went to go see a priest for premarital counseling. Um and we kind of only had the template that we had coming from our 2 different families, and we're like, "Great, now we're kind of, like, left to our own defenses to navigate this." It's taboo to kind of bring your marital problems or whatever issues you're having in your relationship to your friends and family. Like, why would I wanna tell my mom and dad that you and I are having issues? Because then they might think badly or poorly about you. So I'm like, I'm trying to preserve our marriage, but I also need support navigating it, which is, like, enter therapy. But then it's, like, not necessarily it's a stigmatized thing.
Mhm.
Like, "Oh, me and my husband go to therapy," and then people are like, "Hmm, well, what's wrong?" I'm like, "Well, not necessarily anything dire, but I need to learn how to talk to you, like, how to fight fair," you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that that's one of the when I think about our beginnings of therapy together. I mean, I think that because I'm trying to think now as I'm hearing you talk, I'm like, so I had this experience with therapy and not going well, and what kind of led me to then going into therapy and then like actually kind of buying into it and like continuously going because I've been going to therapy, since I've started talking to my therapist. Like, wow, fuck, I don't even remember if that was after. Was that after
Our couples
the?
therapy?
Was that after couples therapy? I'm
Yeah,
trying to
because
remember.
our couples therapist was like, "Hey, I think you could really benefit from having some of your own individual therapy." And I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is you had that trust with him, and then he said that, and you're like, "I'll consider it." You know? I don't
Yeah,
know.
that was my guy Paulo, man. Shout out to Paulo.
Man,
That's my
he's
guy.
great.
I mean, he really I really think I
He's a great
really
therapist.
thank him for coming into my life at that time because I feel like he really allowed me to play in this arena that I had never really played with in regards to communicating with a woman because my relationship with my mom has been so in the silence. Like there's a lot of silence that is involved with my mom and I.
Lord, do I know that.
So I end up having to make up a lot of assumptions about what my mom is feeling, what my mom is thinking, what my mom's gonna say, how
Mhm,
she's feeling about me, how she's feeling about the day. I then transfer that to my partner, in this case you, right?
mhm,
And how much of that I was able to actually play around with when we actually got to Paulo, right? And we got to Paulo off of this like big incident, right? That we had.
mhm.
That's kind of what kind of catapulted us into going to couples therapy. If I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken, right?
Yeah, which was the affair.
The affair that you had, and I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm here to talk about it. I'm here to be curious about this experience. And then being in that arena was really, I mean, it was different for me and then for it to be another man, it almost felt like,
Mhm.
"Oh, man, like, I got a person on my side." Like, that's the way it felt
Yeah,
like
totally.
when I was going into it because it was just like, there's no, um as I'm hearing you talk, a lot of shit is coming up for me, right? When I'm thinking about the sessions with Paulo in the beginning and just thinking about, like, oh, I really want to say something to you right now. And like, I
Mhm,
feel really scared to say this to you. And
mhm.
I don't know if you can handle it. So I'm gonna just throw it to Paulo. And
Yes.
right. And so throwing it to my therapist at that point was then able to kind of like hold it and then set and then kind of spread it out through the room, which was just like a really healing aspect for me, which I think like then that's what kind of led to my own journey in therapy. But like when I think about that couple therapy and um and what it really did for us. I really am thankful because it was really eye opening for me to just be able to listen to you, to actually listen to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that feels so true for me as well because I don't think that I've ever been in a partnership previously where I felt more or less, like, regulated. And so I was doing a lot of work in my own individual therapy around understanding myself and learning skills and tools about like how to express myself and what my boundaries were. And then I take it interpersonally and I'm like, oh, I'm like having things happen in our relationship that I have just like never necessarily bumped up against. Where I'm like, oh, when we fight, I get really scared that we're going to break up. um, I feel like you don't understand me. I don't know how to tell you that I'm afraid you're not gonna understand or see me or be able to handle me, and that feels really scary. Like, am I gonna get my needs met in this relationship? And it wasn't until, like, we started to talk with Paulo that I was like, "Oh, there's, like, an interesting dynamic that's happening here," and kind of, like, looking at it from this really neutral, non-judgmental place. Like, "Hey, you have this thing that you do, and Adiel, you have this thing that you do, and it's just a thing that happens between the 2 of you, and it sounds like you both wanna work on it." Like, you know what I'm saying?
Hmm. Yeah.
So that felt, like, really empowering to be like, "Holy shit, like, I'm not the first person in the whole world that has ever had this issue, 1, and we can actually do something about it. Like, it doesn't have to stay this way forever."
Yeah. 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 I mean, it's really making me think about that exercise that we did in the very beginning.
Oh my god, which one?
We did an exercise in couples therapy that has always kind of stuck with me because, again, like to repeat, right, to what I was saying of like my mom and I's relationship has been in the silence. So this exercise was also done in silence, and the exercise was, uh, how do you perceive like your partners? Like, how do they view this partnership or some shit like that? And I just remember my idea of you was just like, almost like letting you go, or almost like having freedom, and like kind of like, I don't know the way it was like a movement thing. Like I had to move your body, kind of like body sculpting type of deal to
Yeah.
like to kind of give an imagery of like what it was, and like and in that like it was really eye opening because I remember me doing that, and then you being like, "That's not even close to where I want to even be," and like
Mhm.
you started crying, and you're like, "That's just not what I want," and
Yeah.
like
Which is so scary to say.
it's scary to say, and for me to also be like, "Oh shit!" Like I haven't even asked you. Like,
Yeah.
there's just so much there's been such an assumption on my part
Mhm.
about what is it that my partner actually wants, what is it that she needs,
Yeah.
how is she happy, how does she actually look happy in this relationship,
Yeah.
and if I wouldn't have had that moment, then I wouldn't have been able to reflect like, "Oh, shit," like, I'm not asking my partner what it actually is that she wants, and I'm assuming a lot,
Yeah.
and so, you know, so just that exercise, I mean, that was in the beginning, I
That
think,
was
of
our
our
first session.
was it?
Yeah.
No, no way.
Yeah, because he's like, "I'm gonna have you pretend like you're a sculpture in a museum." It was our first session, which looking back, I was like, I don't know if as a therapist I would have chosen that for maybe it wasn't actually our first session, but it was one of the first ones.
I know it was one of the first ones. I don't think
Yeah.
it was our first one.
Well, I was just thinking like it's not lost on me that we both brought assumptions in. Like
Mhm,
not only do we bring these cultural assumptions in, we bring the assumptions in from like what we learned from our parents. But I was just thinking that what keeps coming up for me is that like, my girlfriends growing up had this idea of like, well, the man should just know. Like, the guy should just know that he needs to like do this or he needs to be this way or like what's right and wrong. And to a certain extent, I get it and that's fine. Like, but also it's not helpful when I'm trying to progress in a relationship with you and I'm over here thinking, well, you should just know. Because that's not gonna help anything at the end of the day. Like, you actually don't know. And that was why that exercise was so illuminating because I was like, "You think I want this thing, and I actually don't.
yeah,
I actually need something different." And I don't exactly remember what the need was, but I do remember feeling like my biggest fear was, like, if you really got to know me, would you still wanna be with me? With all of my flaws and all of my, like, quirks and all of my, like, neediness, but messiness and, like, my flirtatiousness and, like, my zest for life. I'm like, "Do you really wanna be with me if,
mhm,
like, I show you all of those things?" So I would hide them from you. So, I mean, which is kind of like, that was the template that I grew up with. It's like you just kinda, like, truck on. You're in this marriage, so you just kinda, like, make it work, and you edit yourself to fit into the marriage, as opposed to push the edges of the marriage to expand it.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think, like, I think that's one of the benefits of going to therapy. I think as a couple, like, I still, like I mean, obviously, both people n need to want to go. I think there's gonna need, like, some buy-in from both people or 3 people, whatever the relationship looks like, however the relationship looks like, and there's gonna be, therapy. Like, I think there is, like, some buy-in that needs to happen. We just so happen to be in the same place in regards to buying in. Me coming in
Mhm.
more from the curiosity of, like, how to support you still. Like, I'm thinking back now about, like, why I was so, like, down to do it, and I think a part of it was to be able to give words to the pain that I was actually going through while being cheated on. Because in my last relationship, I didn't get the chance to do that.
Mhm.
So there was no, like, expression of it. Again, it stayed silent. So
Yeah.
so therapy kinda provided, an avenue to actually start telling you, like, even if we're not together, I can
Yeah.
at least tell you, like, "Hey, that was really shitty,"
Yeah,
you
it
know?
was.
It was really
Yeah.
shitty, and that really hurt, and I got really hurt by that, and I want you to know that, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like, because opposed to the other one where it just went away, right? Like, it just
Yeah.
goes
It
away,
just, like,
but,
was never
uh
had resolution.
I don't know. I feel like that to me was the biggest, like, one of the biggest strengths of it for me, of just like being able to provide words, or even just being in the messiness of finding the words to say things to your partner, like, to your point of, like, that you've been hiding. And and to be able to try to hold that. And maybe
Mhm.
even through that process, you'll learn that maybe you're not ready to hold it. But
Yeah.
at least you know
Yeah.
that you can hold it. You can't or you can't hold it.
Yeah. 100%. Like, I think the reason why I knew I was so like, "All right, this is the person that I'm gonna marry," is because and I always say this, and you're probably like, "Oh god, here we go
Here we go
again. Here's
again.
our"
Ready to work on myself.
No, not even. I mean,
Oh,
yes, obviously, that's part of it, but you are willing to go there.
mm,
Like, you're willing to investigate
mhm.
because the answer at the end of the day could have been no. The answer at the end of the day, we could have gone to couples therapy, and you could have been like, "You know what? You're great, but you're not the woman for me." But you actually were like, "All right, I'm gonna, like, put my shit aside and, like, have this space that where I can express myself, but I'm also willing to listen and see what happens."
Yeah.
Like, just open. And I'm like, "That's cool. I want that in my life partner," you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and again, I mean, you in our case, it worked out. That you're like, yeah, I want that, and I think on my side, I was like, I I do want to be with this person, even though this just happened. Like, I know that this cannot define this person, and like, am I really about like, at least to me, like, I think a part of it was like, again, the humanity part that I've been talking about in the last couple episodes. Like, can I see the humanity in you and be able to tap into that human part of yourself that I am like, that I desperately desire. I think that's why I'm a teacher, is that I
Yeah.
really am looking for the humanity in people, and trying to find the best in people. And even sometimes when the world, I get really affected by the world. I don't feel like it's as much as it was. I don't think it's as much now, maybe because I have kids. But, like, I know when I was younger, like, shit that would happen around the world, like, it would really affect me, you know what I'm saying? Like, it would really, like, have a toll on me and my mood,
Yeah.
and how I saw the world, and wanting to change the world. And so then I'm like, "I can't change the world, but I can change this. I can do this." And even if I'm gonna go there with this person, like, uh can I get to that point with them to actually see them? And even if we're not together romantically, I'm still gonna be your friend, even if it's at a distance, right? Like, so that to me was like a big part of the curiosity for me, because I'm like, uh, and so therapy kind of played that for me, right? Of like, to kind of play in that arena of trying to understand like that human aspect of you,
Mhm.
and trying to fall in love with that, or being in love with that part, as messy as it may sound, from your end of like, flirtatiousness, being all these other things, like, that's you.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I think, like, there is and thinking about also individual therapy, which is kind of to that same point, which is it takes quite a bit of vulnerability and courage to be like, "I'm going to try to show this to you and hope, like, that you'll love me for it. Just love me still or love me despite." Um, and not to say that, like, having that acceptance is the end all be all, but, like, I'm in relationship with you, and I wanna be in a relationship with you, and I want to be in a relationship like, we both wanna be in a relationship with each other, and, like, learning that skill, um, I think is gonna benefit us because we have to do it over and over again as we change throughout life.
Yeah.
Like, that's what makes it really cool because it's not like I was like, "All right, I fucked up," and, like, I wasn't being honest, and I wasn't telling you a thing, and now it's over. It's like, well, no, like, we change. What are you laughing about? What is happening right now? I'm, like, talking about something super serious, and you're, like, cracking up over there. What is going
I'm
on?
not. This one.
Oh my god, are you seeing
I'm sorry.
this?
I'm sorry. Just one of my friends is in the chat, and he's just making
What
comments
chat? What is he
on
saying?
my chat. He's just saying like he just
What is happening?
he's talking about something silly, but no, I mean yeah, it really does kind of bring that aspect of.
Well, now I wanna know what he's saying. No, I wasn't done. I wanna know what your friend is saying since it's so funny.
Oh, he's just saying that he's like I seen that laugh
Oh.
because he's like because he made a comment, so I just made it like I laughed. It was
Oh,
just like
okay.
oh I see that one too. That's why.
Okay. You're silly. You guys are silly. You're silly
Yeah.
with your friend.
Hey, bless his brother. So
Well, now I don't remember what I was saying. Oh, just like that you have to learn how to do that over and over again because you change. You
yeah,
change throughout your life. And
and
like,
like what's cool too is like you can go back to it, which is what we found ourselves doing in our relationship. When it would get hard, we would be like, I think we need to go back to Paulo for even if it's just for one
for one session,
session
yeah.
to come back and like just regenerate or even like look at those tools again
Yeah.
and just have somebody just reflect back of like what's happening. Can you tell like not tell us what's happening, but like can we just need like a reflection right here because we're
Yeah.
kind of like because I think that that's the point, right? Like I think with therapy is like you want at least in couples therapy to me, like at least is my perception of it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're a therapist, right? But my perception of it
I
is
am.
like we work towards it together, and then you want to get to a point where you're doing it without the therapist.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think so. Because like you're not going to go to couples therapy forever. Like I think you could be in individual therapy or seasons of that for a pretty prolonged period of time. But, like, I think, at least for me and how we were with Paulo as well, is like, we kind of all reached a point where we were like, "Hey, like, I think we have enough skills to try to reintegrate this or to try to integrate this in a productive way on our own." And we feel like we've built enough trust and safety and tools to try to do this on our own. Like, we can fight, but then we can also learn how to repair on our own without him. And,
Yeah.
like, that felt really cool to be like, "All right, like, we can take that risk." I mean, especially thinking about it just from, like, a nervous system perspective, like, now I'm gonna nerd out as a therapist, but it's like when you're really activated or when you're feeling triggered, like, you don't have access to any of those, like, when freaking the therapist, Erica, is like, "When you flip your lid," you don't have access to any of that functioning of your frontal lobe. You're like, "Oh, you don't remember any of the skills," like, you're just activated, you're in your, like, animal brain, right? So you're just in your automatic responses. But what ended up happening, it was like, well, we figured out a way to get back into regulation to come back into connection. So,
Hmm.
like, that's cool. We may not have fixed whatever issue it was that we were talking about, but at least, like, we have been able to figure it out as individuals to come back somehow.
Hmm.
So, that was cool.
I mean, I think that's what also was cool about the experience with couples therapy, at least for me, is that once we kind of felt like, okay, we have we have worked on us as a unit together and we've gotten to a point now it's time to dig deep into my own
Yeah.
experience
Yeah.
and like that to me was like one of the more rich parts about the strengthening of why I feel like I'm an advocate for relationships, even couples therapy. Like I always recommend couples therapy, maybe just because it's my
Always.
own journey
Always.
of like go to couples therapy first and then get yourself a therapist. But like I feel like it just helped me like be curious about my own experiences about what is actually happening for me when I'm in partnership with somebody. So
Yeah.
like that invitation wouldn't have been set there if I wouldn't have had the experiences of a couples therapist with you and to dive deeper into like these assumptions that I'm making. And then now I can now then start digging into where do those assumptions come from?
Yeah.
What's happening for me there? What have I made up in my mind about the silence with my mom? And like how am I putting that onto you now? And like how has that relationship with my mom affected the way that I am in relationship with women? And like that all stems from those sessions with Paulo
Mhm.
and that curiosity and then diving into my own journey of my own personal uh therapy sessions because that to me has been even more helpful because now I can like try to be more aware about asking you about things, trying to be more
Yeah.
mindful about the way that we are with each other because it it's my own experience. Like I have to tap into my own things.
Yeah. I appreciate that reflection too because I mean, I think it's really easy to do that. And of course, here we go again with the chat. I see you on the chat.
Well, no, because Renee, sorry, I'll just say Renee wrote to us, says
Oh yeah,
that
what did he say?
he said, so some of the things that you guys are saying, he's like, I wish I had the courage to say to my partner.
Yeah,
And because
absolutely.
I don't want my partner to judge me in the way that
What
that I am.
that is like that's the number one thing that like I felt like really because I didn't know how to tell you. Like, hey, I'm really scared that like I want to go hang out with my girlfriends or maybe I'm like, I don't know, like doing things that I thought were like not appropriate for a relationship that I was like too scared to tell you, because I had all this like templating from my parents that is like, this is what a wife does, this is what a partner does, this is what's appropriate, this is what's not appropriate, this is like how your man is going to see you, and like he's not going to like this. And so I was just kind of like, oh, well, I guess I can't tell you these things because like that's not what a girlfriend does or that's not what a wife does. So I just have to like try to reconcile that all on my own, which is a horrible way to feel.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think that again. I mean, I go back to that like silent space, and I don't know how prevalent that is, but like that's just kind of what comes up of like the the unsaid, the things that we wish we could tell our partners, but we feel afraid to, or we don't make. I think even more so, I think sometimes it's like we don't even have really the words to say
Yeah.
to
We
say
don't
what is
know.
it that we do. So that to me is like that's kind of why I appreciate therapy is because you can stumble through that not knowing. Because there was many times when I was in couples therapy and I'm like, I don't know what the fuck's happening, Paulo. I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know what's happening. Like I don't know. I don't know how I'm feeling. Right. Because as a man, like that wasn't told. Like
Yes.
I was not like raised in this like, oh, I feel sad. I feel really hurt by the way you said like
So, yeah.
that's not what
Identification of your
the
emotions. Yeah.
identification. I mean, and you've seen this lady who I was raised by. This lady is not like
The things that said,
feelings.
how was your day? Fine. Fine. It was fine. I'm fine. I'm not tired. No, I'm not sick. I'm fine.
So
That's
there's like
what mom
so
says.
there's no like it's not that there's no emotional intelligence, but like
No,
the
yeah.
the conversations around emotions are never at the forefront. So when you get into partnership and you feel sad or you feel confused or you feel at a loss of words or you feel kind of like, you know, maybe even anxious about it, then there's no real place to talk about it. But then, at least in this arena for me, it was helpful because I got to experience that. I got to play with the stumbling of like, oh, I feel kind of sad by what's happening right now,
Yeah.
or I feel confused, or I feel really angry, and to say that to you.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking like how difficult it is for me, and I think a lot of us to like hold conflict or like the feeling of disapproval or like maybe conflating that with the feeling of rejection or with the fear that you're going to leave me. And so it is very challenging. I think it has historically been a challenge for us to have an argument because it's like you try to tell me something and then I get so emotional that you're like, okay, well, I just like rather not say anything then if you're just gonna like yell or get upset or start crying. It's like, I mean, I know that we're not the only ones who've experienced that where it's like I try to tell you and then it's like such a huge emotional reaction that like it just now somehow becomes about me. And so
mhm,
I think one of the biggest things that I realized through my own individual therapy, through grad school and learning about couples dynamics, but as well as in couples therapy, I was just like, oh, like I'm not leaving a lot of room for you to express yourself. And I actually want to know how you feel. But like if I'm over here bursting into tears every time that you're telling me like you don't like something, I'm not
yeah,
actually like able to hear what it is that you're trying to tell me. And like I get, like, my feelings are valid, and that's fine, but, like, I genuinely do wanna know, so how much s like, my therapist, who is a man, is like, "Well, how much space are you giving him?" Like, you know,
Yeah.
to hear him, to have him express himself, like, "Do you feel like he thinks that he can tell you?" And I'm like, "Oh."
Well, I mean, I mean,
Oh.
I mean, that's crazy because I didn't really grow up around crying all like that, right? Like my mom's not a big crier, and neither is my dad, unless he was, drunk.
Yeah.
But like, it was like, so it's interesting to hear you say that because my responses to when I would see you cry were not like, "Oh shit, I need to fix this," or "Oh shit, I need to," because I didn't really see people crying, so I didn't really have like a big reaction. If anything, I was just like, the fuck's wrong? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what did I say?
Exactly.
Like, what did I do? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Like what exactly is it that has caused this? Like, there was like a, not necessarily like a block, but I was just kind of curious of like, what is actually happening? 'Cause I don't know if I really believe that you're crying about this thing. Right. And then I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. Is that shitty to say? You know what I'm saying? Like, so how can I say that without hurting you? And I think that that was one of the hardest parts about
Yeah.
couples therapy because I was like, how can I actually like push on this of like, I don't know if I believe you.
Right.
And what are you actually crying about? You know what I'm saying? Like I don't understand like what exactly did I say that caused that? And but through that, right? Like I was able to bounce it off of somebody and then to be able to then hear it back like, oh, like this is actually what's happening. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh shit, that's actually what's happening.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, now we can actually talk about what's actually, what's at the helm.
Right.
So
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine how much gets lost in communication because, like, I have my own narrative, you have your own narrative. We're having projections about what's actually happening plus our lived experience. It's like, oh, you have an issue, and then I know you're gonna break up with me, and blah blah blah, and how horrible, which was like usually what I would think, and then like it took so many times me being like, we're not breaking up, like I'm not breaking up with you. I'm just trying to tell you something. And like just trying to like have a conversation. We're not getting a divorce. And I'm like, okay. Okay. Woo. Thanks for telling me. Because I really need that reassurance.
yeah, yeah, because in that, right, like, I mean, thinking about like my own patterns and my own way of life, like, I mean, it took like a lot of like shitty things happen in my past relationship to finally break up. Like, I wasn't even the one to break up. So it's interesting to be now with a partner that like that's what you're afraid of. When I'm the person that's not gonna break up with you, even if you fucking doing this because I'm like holding on for fucking dear life. So it's interesting how like
Well,
that.
not anymore, but that's how
Not
you used to
anymore,
be.
but at that point, like, that's the way that I was, you know what I'm saying? Like, so it's interesting to hear that because it's like, oh, that's actually, again, kinda to that imagery, like, um, exercise, right, of what we think our partners are, like, I'm actually not really that, like, of the part of, like, I'm gonna break up with you because blah, 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 like,
Yeah.
it'll take something, I think, a lot deeper, a lot like, I think it would take something a lot more like bigger for that to for that to end, if
Yeah.
that makes any sense.
I mean, it's really interesting because thinking about it from this perspective of like, obviously, I have my own narrative, my own lived experience, and to really like have to fight through like, whoa, I feel this in my body that you're gonna leave. Not because it's true, but because that is my own wounding. And then to tell you, like, I really feel like when you say it like this, like when you say like, "Oh, something in our relationship needs to change." And I'm like, what I hear is actually, if it doesn't change, then I'm going to divorce you. You know what I'm saying? And then to be like, I actually am really struggling with what you said and I need your help, because it's like, and my body doesn't believe that like you're actually trying to have a conversation. My body is like, you're leaving me. So I mean, I feel like that has been such like a difficult thing to work through, but like, we've been able to then circle back and be like, "Hey, this is what I thought you were saying." And then you're like, "No, I wasn't saying that. I wasn't. I was trying to talk about this issue that we were having. I wasn't
Yeah,
saying that I was gonna break up with you.
yeah,
Like, really? Because I definitely heard that.
yeah, yeah. Well, look, I think at the gist of this is, I mean, we I think our marriage has really benefited greatly from therapy
This is
and
all just one big commercial. I'm just
for
kidding.
therapy.
To go
No,
to therapy.
no, but I
No,
really
no,
do
no.
encourage it. But I also know that, like, I guess we could start wrapping it up. But I will
Yeah.
say that, like, I know that there's a lot of stigma with therapy, and I think that sometimes we have really bad experiences with therapists, and I think like that's also just like a really real thing. And I guess the only thing I could really speak to that of, like, I think really, and not, I mean, I guess shop around, but like really feel
Yeah.
until you find somebody
Vibe with your person.
that you really feel like you can connect with, and try to connect. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't know how I was gonna be with Paulo, but I knew that I knew that he was a man. He was a man of color, and he was fucking Brazilian. And I'm like, fucking, hey man, I love Brazil soccer team. So, I had a connection points, but I
Yep.
think like I think as much as we can try to get curious about our own experiences, and I think we'll become better partners for each other. And even if it's not the person you're with currently, for your future partner,
Mhm.
they're gonna thank you for it, because whoever that person's gonna be, by the time you get to them, you've already done a lot of the hard stuff, which is to work on yourself. And that's, to me, like, that to me is what makes relationships really work, is when you are willing to go into yourself and be a better person of yourself, so that you can show up better for your partner.
Yeah, and honestly, like showing up authentically,
Hmm.
you know? So, 'cause then you're gonna have probably more fulfilling relationship. Yeah, thank you. Are you reading more comments? I feel like
Yeah.
you're reading.
I
What's
mean, yeah. I
happening?
mean,
What's
you want me
happening in
to?
this comment section that I
So the
can't
comment
see?
section is, well, Luis says that you have to love yourself before you can love anyone else.
Maybe.
Maybe. I think he kind of had to dive deep into what loving yourself actually means, which is really radical, actually, to actually love yourself.
But also sometimes, like, receiving love helps, like, letting love in can help your love for yourself also grow.
That's true, and I think that's what's hard, right? Sometimes receiving that love.
Yeah.
And Renee's kind of telling us a little bit of the story of himself. He's talking about his girlfriend. Uh,
I wanna hear the story.
all right. Well, he says my ex, his ex being his neighbor, left. Able to talk about it.
No, well, I really
But
appreciate you sharing with us right now.
yeah, thank you for sharing with us, Renee.
And I imagine that might have been a difficult transition, but
Yeah, and
yeah,
he says that he knows that he'll never go to therapy, but I hope you do, Renee, one day. That we can do that.
there
And
are
he,
some really, like, cool therapists out there that are not, like, with the jargon, they don't make you feel hella, like, you know what I'm saying? They just,
yeah,
like, don't make you feel like you're in therapy, make you feel like you're talking like a trusted friend.
yeah,
So, I wouldn't totally, you know, I wouldn't totally knock it. But you know what? Whenever you're ready, if you're ever ready, it's cool.
yeah.
All
Uh,
right. Anything
yeah.
else? Any other comments that you've been keeping from me?
No, no, but we had this talk last week where you were trying to do comments in the middle of it, but
No,
you see how
I was saying
distracting
hi
it
to
could be.
I was saying hi to everybody that came in because I was so excited to be able to see everybody logging in, and then you're like, "Don't do that." But I'm happy to hear the comments.
Yeah, but yeah, I but yeah, thank you all for
Yes,
listening.
thank you.
Please subscribe, share with a friend, leave
Yeah,
us a rating on Spotify
we'd
or
love that.
Apple. Uh,
Appreciate all of you.
and thank you for that.
All right. That's it for today.
All right, adios.